All right, so this is going to be a demonstration on glazing your salt and pepper shakers or cinnamon sugar shakers. And I want you guys to apply some of the things that we're going to be doing with this to anything you glaze from here on out. So when you glaze your final coil pot, when you glaze any cups or any smaller things that you made, please do it in this manner, okay? So I'm just using a textured turquoise for this, and I'm gonna load up the brush. I have a soft brush. I don't have one of those stiff bristled brushes. I have a soft brush. That's gonna be better for getting into the little nooks and crannies. So I want you guys, particularly with this, to do a very nice edge along the bottom. Now there's a few ways you can do it. You could drag the brush, or you could work the brush up against the edge like this. You can leave about 1/8 of an inch, but I have to keep loading my brush in order to get it kind of even and nice looking. This is craftsmanship. So when we talk about, how you're evaluated in this course, taking your time to do this, in this way will give you a nice edge. It'll look better. But it also is taking some care to it. So when you go along the edge, just go nice and slow. Try to make it really clean looking and even. Okay? If you have your section that is overlapping like this, you can kind of come up along this as best you can and then start to resume again all the way around. So the bottom edge, you can get a little closer with this than you did with your coil pot test or with your final coil pot. That needs a full 1/4 of an inch. This we can do about 1/8 of an inch. The reason being is that the coil pot, if you think about it, is going to have a lot more glaze on it because it's larger. So if the glaze that you've chosen or the combination that you've chosen tends to drip, there'll be more of it to do that. Where this is a smaller piece, and as long as you don't go too heavy along this bottom edge, you can get a little bit closer, and that should be just fine. All right, so the bottom edge is going to look really nice like this. If you haven't done your test coil pot, you could practice as well and get yourself a really nice edge. What I'm noticing with some students is that we're kind of just slapping it on really quick. This is like the icing on the cake. You need to take your time. How you apply your glaze will directly affect how your final piece looks. So it's very important. All right. For these, we decided on a foot structure, right? We're doing a foot so we can put that cork in there. So one of the techniques I like to do is this, where I just kind of shove the brush in there, but I come up along the edge just like that, and again 1/8 of an inch so that I have a foot that I can put down directly onto the kiln shelf. I cannot stilt these with this foot. It'd be really hard for me to do that. So I cannot have glaze on the bottom. Particularly with the red glazes, the glazes that have iron in them, when you wipe those, they will leave a stain. So you really want to try to apply the glaze where you want it and not just have to wipe it off as a happenstance after the fact. All right? So this is how I want you to apply it. When you come up along the outside hole that is for the cork, you're going to drag it up to that edge like this. Okay? You can cover over where your name is. That should still show. But you do not want to drag it across. So I don't want to just drag it across so that it drags on the opposite side, that it leaves glaze there. And having glaze kind of drip into that will give you an uneven hole so that you won't be able to put the cork in. So that's really important too. Now the last thing, this is really important, is the top. So most of you have holes that are this size. My other one that I did has kind of gigantic holes in it, so that was a little easier to demo. But for this one, you want to bring your brush up to these holes. You can see how I'm doing this, and if you are not looking, please take a moment to look. This is important. So I'm not loading the brush too much, kind of half loading the brush, and I'm bringing this brush right up to each hole, and again, not just dragging across. I want it right up to that hole, but I don't want to just drag the brush across. If you do that, it will fill your hole with glaze and your piece will not function. Really important. This is the most important thing that I can express in doing this. So, as we bring up to each and every spot that you have for the salt, pepper, cinnamon sugar, whatever it is that you're doing it, you want to just go slowly right up to that edge and go like that. I would suggest around the holes no more than 2 coats of glaze, because you don't want those to like drip and fill in. If you have something that feels like it's a very heavy glaze, then maybe just 1. It depends. But you really don't want this to fill in. If I look at it before it goes into the kiln and I determine that it's something that will drip, I will give it back to you, have you wash it off, and redo it. It's that important, because I've seen so many come out that are just like, ugh, and they just don't work. So there's no point in me firing it if it's not going to work, okay, when you're done. Now, doing the outside is pretty easy. When you get in between these little spots, it's a little harder, so you got to go a little slower, a little more careful. Take your time with it. Do make sure that it's all covered, but again, you guys can see how I'm doing this. It's a little fussy, but it's worth it in the end, so that this actually functions. Now, some of you guys have like pattern holes, like that say like S or P or something like that, and that's okay too. You might need a smaller brush if you don't have a lot of space in between where you have the holes for the salt and pepper. Okay, and that looks about right. So that's roughly what you want to do. I will go through and continue to glaze this. One of the things with the texture that you want to make sure is that you're really working the glaze into the little bits of texture. Sometimes if you just kind of go across like that really quickly without working it into it, even though it covers it, it might look like it's totally covered, but it might not be. Okay, it might have a little kind of air pocket in there, and that will cause a separation, and then you'll see kind of just a white spot, which is kind of not great. Rinsing these off helps with that, though. So if you haven't rinsed off your salt and pepper shaker before you've done it, please do. What happens is you'll get a little dust, a little clay dust from the kiln on it, and again, if you go across it really quick, it kind of just covers over that clay dust, and that clay dust acts like a resist, and then it separates, and you'll end up with a weird white spot on your piece, which looks a little goofy. Okay, so really important. So wash off your stuff first, make sure that it's kind of rinsed off and ready to glaze, and then just kind of slowly work through this. Looking at your glaze again, you guys can choose just a straight glaze if you want. You do not have to do a layering. If you want to do a layering, you can. You can use the Celadons. If you have a rough surface that you want a little smoother, I would suggest the matte glazes. The black, white, I think I have black, white, cayenne, and kind of an orangey yellow one. And those will smooth things out. If you want to really highlight your texture, then you really want to look at the glaze and make sure it doesn't look kind of melty on the front of the bottle. They'll show it, where there might be a different color and it shows the texture a little bit more, where some of them, like the I think the Sapphire Float, is a little more melty looking, as an example. Okay, so that is it. Thank you for your attention, and we're going to be glazing from here on out.